Good evening and welcome to CB8 Speaks. I am Loraine Brown, affectionately called Mrs. B, and a member of Community Board 8, in which I serve as Chair of Census 2020 Task Force. Our guest this evening is Mr. Jeff Behler, the Regional Director of the United States Census Bureau. And welcome, Mr. Behler. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Mrs. B. It's an honor to be here with you.
Thank you. We feel the same way. Last October, I had participated with Borough President Brewer's delegation to Providence, Rhode Island, in which we viewed the census test that was done in 2018. Would you please share with us what that entailed?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 2018 census test, which was done in Providence County, Rhode Island, the only site in the nation that was part of the 2018 census test. So the goal of 2018 was to really test all those systems that touch the public. So when we talk about hiring, we hired people electronically. People went online to fill out their job applications. People responded to the 2018 census test online for the first time. So that was exciting. And then we also did data collection. So when we were out there knocking on doors in 2018, we used smartphones. And we trained local residents to basically go out there. And for those households that never completed their form online or on paper, we went and knocked on their doors.
Okay. Well, you mentioned the digital aspect going online. Is this the first time that the census has decided to go online? And if so, what were the results?
Yeah, it is. We learned that in the 2018 census test that over 50% of the responses that were received via self-response, so meaning they either went online, they filled out their paper form, or they called a toll-free number to provide their information, over 50% responded online, much higher than what we thought. And taking into account, we didn't have a partnership program.
Oh, okay.
We didn't have a media campaign to really let the residents of Providence County, Rhode Island know that this test was going on. It was really a word of mouth type of thing. So we think it was a tremendous success.
Okay, well, for the 2020 census, how are you going to get people to participate? Are you going to send an invitation to all of the households, or is there a certain percentage, like 80%? Mm-hmm. How are you going to address the senior population, the elderly population who are not comfortable with computers?
It's a great question, and I want to stress going online is not the only way you can respond in 2020. It's really important to know. So we basically have 4 ways in which you can respond to the 2020 census online. So again, first time we're doing this, we're really excited, opens up the doors to a lot of new opportunities for our partnership program. Second is over the phone. We've always had a toll-free telephone component, but this will be the first time that households can call us. We won't be calling out, but they can call us and provide their information for their household over the phone. Both online and over the phone we're really excited about will be available in English and 12 non-English languages, the most we've ever supported on a decennial census.
Very good. Do you have a sense of how many people will actually respond online? How are you going to use this on a nationwide scale?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're estimating a little over 60% we believe will self-respond. And it's not just online, but it's over the phone or on paper. That's an early goal for the 2020 census. Doesn't mean we're only going to count a little over 60% of the population. It just means we're going to have to go knock on doors and collect that information. So our goal, especially at a local level, is to work with communities to try to increase that response. We had neighborhoods in 2010 that had over 77% response rate in New York City, some of the best in the nation. And we had other areas that were much less. So what we're trying to do is to get as many people as we can to self-respond, because self-response is the best data we ever get out on a census. It's the highest quality at the lowest possible cost to a taxpayer.
Very good. How are your partnerships working in reaching this goal? Do you have many partners? And if so, how many are there, and are they being effective?
Yeah, absolutely. We have over 6,000 partners already, and we'll continue adding partners and complete count committees up until the end of the census. The partnership program, I think, is the most vital component that we conduct in a census, because they're out there today reaching out to local community board leaders. They're reaching out to churches, to community-based organizations, to local elected officials, to state elected officials, getting the word out about the census, that the census is safe, that it's easy, that it's important.
Very good. Please share with our audience why the census is necessary and how many questions are going to be on this particular survey.
Yeah. I like to say we'll never get to where we want to be if we don't know where we're at. And that's what a census is. It's taking a snapshot of our nation as of April 1st, 2020. So mandated by the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, mandates that we conduct a census of both people and households every 10 years, and those years ending in 0. So that's what we're focused on now, preparing for 2020 census. What some of our partnership specialists are doing with community-based organizations throughout the area, because this is an online as one of the ways you can fill out. Libraries are just a wonderful resource. Community colleges, YMCAs, any place that may have a computer bank can serve. Right now they're serving as employment centers. So libraries are helping their local community residents to, to fill out an application to work for us. And then they're pledging that starting basically next March, mid-March, when we mail out the packets, that they'll be opening their doors to allow people, community members, to come in and fill out their census online if that's what they choose to do.
That's excellent. And I'd like to add that NYCHA has committed to have a computer bank at their 189 management offices where the residents will not have to leave the development and can go in and complete the questionnaires.
That's amazing, and that's what it's going to take, that partnership, that working together, making it as easy as possible for people to fill it out.
Yes, and in addition to that, our city council, I should say, has set aside X number of dollars for NYCHA developments for the residents to be the enumerators and knock on the doors, because we want people to be familiar with their neighbors and they know who they are so that they would respond and complete that questionnaire.
Yeah, it takes trusted voices. From the partnership program to those enumerators. When we hire people, we want to make sure, we often say, even though the census is a national event, in order to be successful, it has to be conducted at the local level. We have to hire people who speak the languages in those neighborhoods, who understand the culture. And that's our goal right now, working with partners, trying to ensure we build a robust applicant pool. So when it comes time to select people to go out there and work in their neighborhoods, we have ample candidates.
Well, that's good to hear. Now, I understand that the census timeline is in 3 phases. Right now, we're in phase 1, awareness and preparation, which is almost over. That being said, have you filled all of the positions in New York? And if so, how many positions, and what are they, and what needs to be added on, and so forth?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a whole bunch of positions out there that we have been filling. Let me first start out with enumerators. So it's the largest number of people we employ ever on a census. Those are the people who are actually working out of their homes, whether it's knocking on doors, whether it's collecting addresses. Right now, we're in the midst of our first operation called address canvassing. We'd hired a couple thousand people in New York City, $25 an hour, to go out there and collect address information in preparation for the next year's activities. We've hired recruiting assistants. We need people out there to work with libraries and community-based organizations to train them on how to fill out an application, as well as provide support. If an organization wants to host an event for their community members, we'll provide the technical one-on-one support needed to make it as easy as possible for people to apply. We're opening up 13 offices throughout New York City. We need local residents to staff those offices, from clerical positions all the way up through the top manager in that office. We need local residents.
Very good. Now, the people who are going out verifying addresses, are they called listers?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, these listers, when they go from building to building and verify the addresses, is it possible to add to their many duties to find out if the respective building has a tenant association, and if so, who the contact person is, so that the census specialists could reach out and do a job opportunities and information workshop?
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. Part of the address canvassing operation, especially when we go to multiple family homes or apartment buildings, is to collect the information of the superintendent or someone as a contact person.
Yes.
And absolutely, we're always sharing information because we're not at our goal yet for hiring people, and we're not supposed to be. It's not till next year, but
Yes.
we want to get a great start. We want to make sure we're hiring people who have that local knowledge, the language skills, the cultural experience that's needed to be
Yes.
successful in 2020.
Thank you. Now, with regard to phase 2, engagement and get out the count, how are you going to work with off-site campus students who eventually leave the area? How are you going to address that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So part of our group quarters operation, right now we're developing contact lists for colleges and universities, jails and prisons, nursing homes, service-based organizations such as mobile food vans and soup kitchens all across the nation. And we're going to be working with them to kind of, especially when you talk about students in colleges and universities, we want to make sure that they understand how the counting works.
Yes.
So the counting for those on-campus students will be done via our group quarters operation. That's when we work directly with the college or university, provide them with options that they can provide, whether they want to send us an electronic file of the students in their dormitory or whether they want us to drop off paper questionnaires. We give that choice to every building, every group quarter across the nation. For those off-campus students that are renting an apartment or renting a house, which is our very difficult group to count. It's one of the challenges we have. We are working with those local collegiate officials and university officials to when they advertise. And right now they're advertising about jobs because it's a great opportunity for a student. But they're also planning how they're going to engage their students. And they're putting their student government in charge of creating media campaigns or the message, to make sure people understand. But they certainly understand it's not just for the students on campus, and probably more importantly, it's those students who live off campus.
Yes.
We need to get to them before they go home for that semester.
Thank you. Now, another area of concern is the timeline in the invitation letter. Some people are hearing that it's a postcard, but I believe it's an invitation letter that goes out March 16th?
Yeah, it'll be the week of March 12th through the 19th, basically.
Okay.
We'll be doing a staggered mailing approach across the nation, and that it'll be a packet. And in that packet, it'll be the URL, asking people to go online to fill out their census online, although they'll have an invitation to do that. It'll have their unique census ID, just a replacement for an address. So when you go online, you enter in your 12-digit ID, it knows automatically the data you're about to enter, where it should go when we release the count.
Is this the barcode they're talking about?
It's an actual 12-digit number.
Okay.
It was the barcode on paper forms in the past, but now since people can go online, we want to give them their census ID. Okay. I want to stress, even if you don't have it, you can still go online and enter your information. You just may have to key in your address and your nearest cross streets, because our goal is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place.
Yes.
And that's very important. In addition, in that packet, we'll have a listing of 13 different telephone numbers, toll-free telephone numbers. There'll be one for English, and then one for each language that's going to be available both online and over the phone. The great thing about this, you call the Russian number or the Polish number, someone who speaks that language will pick up the phone and immediately converse with that household in that particular language.
Now, for those who do not respond, what is the next step for the Census Bureau during that phase of March 12th through the 20th?
Yep, absolutely. So we're going to start knocking on doors throughout the nation beginning mid-May of 2020. So right around the 12th through the 13th of May, we'll start that process. It's important to note that people can self-respond mid-March once they receive that packet all the way through the end of July. We don't want people to think because you hit mid-May, it's too late to go online or to call the toll-free number or to fill it out on paper and mail it back. So that's part of our message. When we knock on a door, starting in May, and if no one answers, we leave them a reminder. You can go online, and oh, by the way, here's your census ID.
Yes.
And what we found is people don't want to open up their door to someone they may not know or do not recognize and provide this information. They'd much rather take care of it online, over the phone, or on paper. So it's another way to remind them that, hey, it's not too late to self-respond.
Yes.
And we'll be asking, when we do knock on the door, the same questions that are on that paper form, that are online, or that you would provide over the phone.
And how many questions this time? I believe there are only 11 questions.
Yeah.
In the past, it used to be a booklet, pages
That's right.
and pages. So you've streamlined it to 11 questions. What are those 11 questions?
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Census 2000 was the last census in which we conducted the long form. So 1 out of every 6 households got this booklet. This is the second time we'll be doing a short form only census, roughly 10 questions, as you mentioned. So what do we ask? We ask for name, your age and your date of birth, your race and ethnicity, whether or not you're of Hispanic origin, your relationship to the first person who's listed on the form, so mother, father, son, daughter, roommate, gender, and tenure, whether you own or rent your home, because this is an enumeration of both people and housing units. And that's it. We don't ask for Social Security numbers. We don't ask for bank account or credit card information, and we never ask for money. Those are buzzwords. If you hear that in relation to the census, it's a scam.
Okay, thank you. Now, if you have a friend or a relative visiting from another state, staying with you for maybe 2 or 3 months, must they be counted when you receive the questionnaire?
So we have residence criteria that's available on our website, 2020census.gov, that basically goes through all these different situations. The general rule is you should be counted where you live or stay most of the time. So when you're looking at a year period, if you spend 9 months out of the year at your home in New York, and then during the winter months you go to Florida for 3 months, you need to make sure you're counted in New York. So if you have is there a family member or a friend who's living with you temporarily, but they have a home to go back to, we'd want to make sure they get counted at their home if that's where they usually live or stay. We certainly dealing with the hurricane and all the damage that they've done in the past. If someone doesn't have a home to go back to and they are staying with you, you need to make sure you put them on your census form.
Absolutely, because they're utilizing resources.
Absolutely.
And you do not have to be a citizen to utilize the resources. You have people that come and visit that are involved in taking advantage of services, public services.
Absolutely.
So that's important to know. Now, with regard to jobs, can undocumented people apply for jobs with the census who have language skills?
Yeah, absolutely. So we want everyone to apply right now. Now, we don't have approval yet, but we're seeking approval with the current appropriations law that's in place to have the flexibility to hire people with a language skill in the event we don't have any U.S. citizens who have that skill. But in order to do that, we need people to apply.
Yes.
So we're asking everyone to apply now. Don't wait till we find out for sure that we have the approval to move forward. We're going to need that information.
Okay.
We're going to need to be able to show we have people who are on their pathway to citizenship or have their green card that have a skill set that we need that we can't hire with U.S. citizens.
Okay. I want to be very clear. Before you get to May and the enumerator knocking on the door, do you send reminders such as postcards? And if so, how many reminders do you send before you reach that point in May?
Yeah, great question. So we'll have a total of 5 mail-outs that we'll be doing between mid-March through early May. The first one will be the packet. Some households will receive a paper form in the packet, others will not. The majority will not. But yes, we'll have a reminder postcard at times. In early April, if we haven't received a response from an address, we will mail out a paper form in the 4th mail out, so roughly April 8th through the 12th.
Okay, thank you. My concern is with messaging, making sure that the undercounted receives the correct message as an incentive to complete the form. What is the Census Bureau doing to address the uncounted populations, such as the Hasidic community, the Black and Latino communities? What is the messaging that's going to be shared with all?
Yeah. So we're producing, we have a social media toolkit, we have a national media toolkit. We're spending over $500 million in a national media program. But we certainly know that the message needs to be tailored to individuals, to individual neighborhoods, to buildings. So that's why the partnership program is so important, and our media program is so important. We're working with local leaders, such as yourself, to understand what is the right message. Yes. Here's a toolkit of messages. Work with us. Let us know, is there one that works well? If so, let's use it. What's the best way to get it out? Is it a local TV station, a TV program? Is it an in-language radio station? Is it a local leader, a rabbi, a church leader, giving the message at a church? So we certainly understand the more types of messages that we have allows the local community leaders to really say, you know what, this one is the one we need for our community, and this is how we're going to get it out.
Thank you. Earlier this year, there was a brouhaha with regard to the citizenship question. Is it fair to say at this point we should not worry about the citizenship question because it's not going to be on the questionnaire? But how do we convince people who are undocumented that they are protected?
Yeah, it's a great question. The U.S. Supreme Court did rule that the 2020 census will not have a question on citizenship. So moving forward, that question will not be on the form. I've certainly heard, our staff has certainly heard from a lot of our community-based organizations that a lot of damage has been done, a lot of mistrust exists out there. So that's why we're working with local community leaders such as yourself. And two things I want to focus on. First is the importance of the census. People have to understand what it truly means. You know, we like to talk about representation and funding. So the U.S. House of Representatives, is the seats each state has are based on census data. States use our data for redistricting, for school districts, for drawing voting precincts. Businesses use this as a kind of the threshold for measuring everything else. So it's extremely important for our future. And then you look at the funding that is given to communities across this nation using formulas that use census data. Over $675 billion of federal funding is disseminated every year. And I'll use this great example I got from a community board president. She was talking to her group, and she talked about what an undercount really means. And she said, think of a school of 100 kids, all right? And let's say only 80 of those kids get counted, all right, 80%. That school is going to receive funding for 80% of the students that it has. Funding for 80% of its need, not just next year, but for the next 10 years. And it's not just on people, it's not enough just to say, I'm going to fill out my form, and that's it. We need everyone's help in being that trusted voice and being that validator, that census champion, making sure their neighbor fills it out, making sure their coworkers fill it out, their community members at their church or their favorite restaurant. Have that conversation about the census to let people know what it means if they choose not to be counted in the 2020 census.
Does the Census Bureau have a budget to do PSAs for mothers who participate in the WIC program, for people who get SNAP, and for the elderly regarding Medicare, Medicaid, and Medi-Cal? Are they going to do PSA messages?
So there'll definitely be PSA messages. That's part of our national media contract. Again, that's not something that's ran by us in the New York region, but it's run by our staff at our headquarters. And they certainly frequently ask for our input. So I think it's a great idea, and I'm going to make sure that that's on their list of to-dos.
Mr. Behler, in conclusion, there are two real major concerns for me, and that's the privacy. Once this information is provided, what happens to it? Can anybody outside of the Census Bureau demand that you hand it over, or whoever collects it, are they liable? What would happen if this information fell in the wrong hands?
Yeah, great question. And this is part of our conversation that we're asking people to start in their community, that the census is safe, that the census is easy, and that the census is important. And this really builds around the census is safe. So there's a federal law created in the 1950s called Title 13 that basically protects every piece of data that the Census Bureau collects. And what Title 13 states basically is that we cannot release any information that would identify an individual or a household, period. Local, state, federal law enforcement cannot access our data. Homeland Security cannot access our data. Immigration and Customs cannot access our data. Every piece of data we collect is protected under this federal law. In addition, everyone who works on a census, whether this will be my third census or whether this is your very first and you're working one of our short-term operations, everyone takes an oath of confidentiality, meaning if they were to release information that would identify an individual or household, they will be in prison up to 5 years, fined up to $250,000. And that oath of confidentiality is for life, not just while you're employed, but the rest of your life. It's really the foundation of everything we do. So we take data security seriously. In addition, not everyone at the Census Bureau has access to this data. Only the people who have a need to know can access the data. I don't have access to the data. We collect the information, we immediately encrypt it, and we store it on our devices. We don't have a third-party vendor collecting this information. Cybersecurity has been a top priority of the census all decade. And a lot of the funding, a lot of the testing, a lot of the infrastructure that we did in mid-decade was focused around making sure every piece of data we collect is secure.
Very good, thank you. Are you addressing the needs of the rural community in rural upstate New York and counting? And also, what about the children? People tend to not include children in the questionnaire, thinking that it's not required.
Yeah, again, that's part of our partnership program. So let me start with the rural areas. We know in a lot of rural areas, libraries are the equalizer for the community. Yes. So we're working directly with those libraries. We're working with churches in rural areas. We're working with farm owners. They may have migrant workers who live on their farm. We want to make sure they understand why it's important that their migrant workers get counted. So again, it's all part of our messaging campaign and our strategy to ensure we have those local trusted voices at every community across the state of New York to ensure we get a complete and accurate count.
Thank you. Well, why did they choose April 1st for Census Day?
Yeah.
April 1st is April Fool's Day.
It's a great question. I wish I knew the answer, but I don't. So it's on my homework list to find out and get back to you. I promise
Thank
you
you.
that. But it is an important day. That really is our reference point for the 2020 census.
Okay. Now, with regard to the data that's collected on April 1st, how can I access that in real time to find out how many people completed the survey?
Another great question. So we're really excited. This is something we did for the first time in 2010 that we're doing again in 2020. We will provide self-response rate at a very low level of geography, what we call a census tract. It could be a neighborhood. It's typically between anywhere from 1,500 to 18,000 in population. But we're going to provide on a daily basis to the public, not just to certain people or to certain elected officials. The public will get an update once a day starting mid to late March, where they can see the self-response rates for every census tract across the nation. So we have local officials who are planning contests already, challenging one another to see, can this neighborhood do better this, can this community board? I heard of a very important community board leader that challenged the rest of our community boards with the last name of B, I think. But that's the kind of, make it fun. Yeah. I mean, and it is serious. It is extremely important.
Yes.
But we can have some fun with this.
Yes.
And this tool will provide an opportunity for people to kind of really gauge in real time. And then we're going to use that information on a daily basis, our partnership program, to work with community leaders in those areas. First off, the areas that are doing extremely well, what are they doing? Can we replicate it in this area over here who may not be doing as well? That's where we want to focus our resources, in those areas that aren't self-responding as much as other areas.
Well, our last few minutes, what would you like for us to do? How can we be better? How can we be more supportive? And what do you think we need to reach that goal that everybody is counted in place?
Yeah. Two things we can do right now. And I know you gave me some homework, so I'll give our viewers some homework
Thank you.
as well. First off, start that census conversation. The census is safe. It's protected under Title 13. We cannot use information to harm anyone. We cannot release information on an individual or a household, period. The census is easy. 4 ways to respond: online, over the phone, on paper. That's the way we want people to respond, what we call self-response. The fourth way is knocking on doors. And again, it's a short form only census, roughly 10 questions, 10 minutes to complete. And then lastly, it's important. Congressional reapportionment, billions and billions of federal dollars that are so vital to a community for the next 10 years. So start that conversation. The census is safe, the census is easy, the census is important. The one other thing is, please share the word about jobs.
Yes.
Even though the census is a national event, in order to be successful, it has to be conducted on the local level. We need community members to work in their own community. And at $25 an hour throughout New York City, it's a great job. And you don't have to quit. If you have a 40-hour-a-week job, you don't have to quit. You can work part-time. You can work nights and weekends and be extremely successful in supporting your community and earning a little extra money. You choose your own schedule, and then based upon the schedule you enter for the next 5 days, these are the days and hours I can work. We're going to give you an assignment that'll try to make you as successful as possible.
And how long is the training period?
Training typically is about a week long, but we don't need you in a classroom like we did in the past. Very first day you come to a classroom, you get your device, you go through some paperwork to officially swear you in as a census employee, and then we send you home. And we're going to give you anywhere from 8 to 10 hours of online self-study to do. Do it at your own pace. You have roughly a week, and then you'll come back that following week and kind of tie it all together. And just make sure you understand the concepts, and then you're ready to go in the field.
Okay. Now, is fingerprinting required? And if so, will they accept people who have misdemeanors and or felonies?
Yeah, so because this is a public position and we're knocking on doors and going into neighborhoods, we take security very seriously. This is a federal job, so background check is required. Every applicant who states that they want to work for the census, if selected, they will be asked to provide fingerprints and go through a background check. We are working with community-based organizations that support those that have recently been incarcerated to try to make it easy for them to apply and for things that they can do in advance. Check to see if they have a record. If they have something outstanding, get it taken care of now. Don't wait until that position is offered. We will be offering positions roughly 60 days in advance of training. The whole purpose of that is to allow people, if they do have a background hit, whether it's a legitimate one or whether it's an error for some reason, we want to give them enough time to go ahead and investigate the situation, get the proper documentation if it's needed, to still be able to be trained in time. So it's certainly a group, especially in this economy, we need to make sure that we are making it as easy as possible for all people to apply for our jobs.
Okay, thank you. Now, after the census campaign is over and the temporary workers want to work full-time permanently, is there an outlet that they can go to? Will the census be hiring permanent people, or can they use these services or this experience to apply to other government jobs?
Yeah. So every position on a census, mine included, is temporary. All of our positions will end. But this is federal experience, and part of our job, once the work is over, is to continue working with our partners. These are valuable skill sets people learn. And we really meet some superstars that work on a census, and we want to work with them, whether they want to continue with the federal government, whether maybe they want to go to a state government or maybe a local employer. So we're going to work with them on how to, correctly document the skill set that they learn, make sure they have the background materials they need to kind of really showcase what they did. I mean, this is the largest operation we conduct in peacetime in this nation. And to say you worked on a 2020 census, it's pretty amazing.
Good deal. And I'm sitting here thinking about the victims of Hurricane Dorian, people from the Bahamas who have been relocated to Florida. there's a strong possibility that they may not be able to return to their home next year and that they would be in place. Are they to be counted if they're in shelters or temporary locations?
Absolutely. We want to make sure they're counted where they usually live or stay as of April 1st, 2020. So if they don't have a home to go back to, and they are staying in the States with maybe a family member or at a shelter, we want to make sure they get counted at that shelter, because that shelter, there's important programs that shelter uses, that those community use, whether it's for the infrastructure of their roads and their schools, to whether some of the Medicaid and SNAP and other programs that community members would be using.
Okay. The list is collecting the various shelters here in New York and counting people there or verifying how many are there, since most shelters are mobile, transient?
Yeah, so part of our group quarters operation that we'll do towards the end of March of 2020 is we will visit every mobile soup kitchen or every mobile food van, every soup kitchen, every homeless shelter over a 3-day period at the end of the March, because it's close to Census Day, April 1st. So we're working with community-based leaders, community-based organizations that serve the homeless population now to gather that information and to learn from them in this 3-day period next March, what day should we come? And then what time of day should we come?
Yes.
In addition, we're creating an exhaustive list of places where people who are experiencing homelessness who don't stay in a shelter at night. Maybe it's below the underpass, in Central Park, behind the church, behind the CVS. We're going to create that exhaustive list, and then at midnight, on either the night of March 30th or 31st, we get a team of employees that will go out and visit every one of those sites to conduct a head count. We won't wake anyone up, but we'll just do a head count to make sure they are captured in the 2020 census.
Thank you. Do you provide questionnaires to inmates in jails and prisons? How is that being counted?
Yeah, another great question. Also part of our group quarters operation that we conduct. Typically with prisons and jails, we'll reach directly out to that facility. Historically, previously in 2010 at least, they provided us electronic files. So we didn't go and hand a question out or go cell to cell, but the administration would hand us that or send us that file electronically and safely. And we would use that information to ensure they were enumerated, they were counted in 2020.
Well, this has been most informative. I thank you very much for coming and sharing this information with us. And we look forward to partnering with you and being there to support whatever the Census Bureau needs from us in Community Board 8. And thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your leadership.
Surely. My pleasure.